It's only through determination that Maitland Harness Racing Club is still racing, but the end, it seems, is nigh. Scheduled to become purely a training facility by mid-year, the club has just a handful of race dates left, including the time-honoured Intercity Pace. However, a plan to safeguard that carnival has been scuttled as well by Harness Racing's own governing body twice.
Harness Racing New South Wales knocked the idea on the head, Jim. Their argument being that Maitland is not now a designated TAB venue, and in fact, up until a few months ago, was only going to be a training centre.
The plan was forwarded by Sydney's Harold Park Club, which wanted to host heats before allowing Maitland to feature a $40,000 final race day. It was a move that would safeguard the carnival and give the club at least one big day of the year.
Harold Park have since made another application to them to reconsider. However, Harness Racing New South Wales have said no, and that the matter will not be reconsidered.
Gone with it is an extensive marketing campaign funded by the Sydney Club aimed to attract racegoers to the region.
This industry's never been very good at promoting itself. As a matter of fact, it's been very ordinary at promoting itself. This was an opportunity to race with good prize money with the backing of the principal club in New South Wales.
The Intercity Pace Carnival will now be raced in March for limited prize money, most likely for the last time. Jim Callanan, NBN News.
Newcastle Airport at Williamtown is Australia's fastest growing regional airport. It's also one of the largest and busiest in New South Wales, with around 50,000 passengers passing through the terminal each month. Given that and the current political climate, the federal government is concerned that Newcastle and other regional airports could be targets for terrorists, prompting a $20 million security boost.
Well, Newcastle Airport welcomes the fact that they are increasing security. Aviation security is a worldwide issue at the moment, and whilst we comply with all the current arrangements, it's always nice to have a bit more.
Teams of specially trained federal police, bomb squad specialists and sniffer dogs will travel to 146 regional airports throughout the year, depending on intelligence advice. They'll test security plans, run training sessions for airport staff and generally step up security visibility.
They'll be using the deployment up here as part of their normal training exercises so that they become familiar with our facilities and equipment, but also it's a deterrent that they'll be showing their face, using their dogs.
$8.5 million will be spent on hand-wand metal detectors along with passenger and bag screening devices. The changes will be implemented by July. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News.
If 9-year-old April ever wanted to send pop star Hilary Duff some fan mail, it would have taken days by post. Now April's idols are just a click of the mouse away.
Oh, she's wanted one since kindergarten, but last year she really needed one when she had an assignment and we had a lot of trouble trying to get it done. We actually had to go up to her cousin's and borrow hers.
With money hard to come by, April's family bought the recycled computer from CityCare, a Newcastle-based charity which has started selling PCs to single parents, the unemployed, concession and pension card holders.
$260 is a very, very reasonable price to be able to get a computer of this quality, a Pentium 3. It's pretty well loaded up with all the good gear in it.
Nationally, an estimated 1 million computers are discarded each year. Many of those are now being cleaned up and resold.
In Canberra, the hard drives are wiped and program under licence to Microsoft is loaded onto the computers.
Workshops are being organised to guide technophobes into the digital age. As for April, school holidays mean just one thing. Do you have a favourite game?
Yeah, I like the Sims creator. And I got it for Christmas.
Servicing northern New South Wales, more donations are needed to meet demand, with all inquiries welcome. Adam McKilrick, NBN News.
The most talented junior surfers on the planet may be in Sydney to find who's best, but again the weather just won't come to the party. On hold all morning, competitors faced wind-blown conditions at North Narrabeen in longer afternoon heats.
We'll probably give them half an hour heats this afternoon too, which juniors aren't that used to, and you know, when you get to the WCT formats, heats are half an hour nearly all the time.
Normally, that'd be music to Brazilian Adriano de Souza's ears, but the defending champion was a shock elimination today, beaten by German Marlon Lipke as the European-based charge at this event continues. The last Australian standing, Lennox Head teenager Adam Melling, was another to fall at the hands of surfing's unlikely new superpower. This time, Spaniard Aritz Aranaburu doing the damage to round out Australia's worst ever performance at these championships, with all 6 now gone.
Pretty shocked. I would have liked to see the Aussies get up there and have a real dig, but I suppose not this time.
It seems to me that if you're a resident of Pitcairn Island or you're a resident of New Zealand, you'll get bail. If you're a resident in Australia, you don't get bail. And that doesn't say very much for the Australian judicial system.
It's one of Hunter Street's quiet achievers. While you've probably noticed Newcastle Stock Exchange's share trading message boards, for the past 5 years the operation behind the scenes has been opening the door for small to medium-sized firms to access capital and other business opportunities. Taking a page from its own book, NSX has recently sold 24 million shares in the business, which will trade on the Australian Stock Exchange from Thursday.
We've raised $12 million in our recent offer, and that will propel us into another level of growth, another method of operating our business.
With 28 companies now trading on Newcastle's automated trading system, the money will be used for future expansion, including a proposed takeover of competitor, the Bendigo Stock Exchange.
We've mentioned in the prospectus that if everything proceeds with the due diligence, then we will proceed to purchase Bendigo after we've listed on the ASX.
There's also the prospect of new international listings, with the NSX invited to China next week to address a forum on public share floats and developing overseas partnerships. Gary Blair, NBN News. They come from gentler times when home security was less of an issue. But with the rising number of elderly residents in Hamilton South, Merriweather and the Junction having their homes broken into while they work outdoors and thieves stealing cash and valuables, police have issued this warning.
You have to really be more aware of the security about your home, about whether or not you keep yourself safe. And if you're not, then potentially you're opening yourself up to be a victim.
The inner Newcastle suburbs may be undergoing a generational change of home ownership, but given the spike in crime, police want residents to call them if strangers are noticed in the neighbourhood.
Ring us straight away. We'll come round, we'll talk to that person. Now, even if all we do is scare them out of the area, there's been something achieved. They haven't committed a break-in.
And the best way to avoid becoming a victim of crime is to check your home for easy points of entry.
And above all, be a good neighbour. Look out for the others in the neighbourhood.
Gary Blair, NBN News.
That's perfect.
Only a few weeks ago, Kerry Podhast was enjoying a white Christmas in Canada. It's the beach she knows best though, and it was back to work today. But what an office. Winning the opening 2 rounds of the National Series with an American, the Sydney Games gold medalist skipped the 3rd event but has returned to team up with Greek Olympian Vicky Karadasso in the Newcastle leg.
I said to her, just yell at me in Greek. At least I know where you are on the court. If you're behind me, just say something in Greek and eventually we'll find our way.
What would be interesting conversation? Talk of their Olympic match against each other in Athens that Podhast won.
We haven't spoken about that game yet because we did win that game. It was a very tough game in front of 10,000 Greeks that were pretty much screaming for them and screaming against us.
As a pair, they didn't have much trouble today, winning both games in straight sets. The men's draw looks much closer, and there's no denying the chances of Australian Olympic star Julian Prosser. A veteran of the circuit, Prosser has teamed with Swiss tall timber Sasha Hayer, and it looks a formidable pairing. But there's still a long way to go in this tournament, with more games tomorrow and the finals on Sunday. It's not often a promising young Australian footballer opts against a deal to play in Switzerland to stay and play in the domestic competition. But such is the lure of the new A-League, Franco Parisi just had to stay.
I had a flight and I've cancelled it and here I am.
It's fair to say the chance to team with Ante Milicic up front for the Jets was a big factor too. The former young Socceroo began his NSL career with him at Olympic and can't wait to do it again.
Exactly. I'm looking to be with Ante up front and, grab goals every game.
The 21-year-old signing is sure to be followed by two more in coming weeks before eyes return closer to home as plans to round out the 20-man playing roster draws closer.
I think it's very important that here in the Hunter we look at giving the opportunity to some young lads coming through, and that's a judgment that the coaching staff will have to make.
On that very subject, the on-again, off-again, on-again affair with Englishman Terry Venables will come to a head next month. The man himself will visit the area and owner Con Constantine hopes a deal to coach can still be struck.
I certainly respect Con's determination, and I've got a funny feeling he may end up getting his man.
Just run them, and we seen them kind of dropping their heads, and so they did fatigue. I don't think they gave up; that they just retired.
The Sunday afternoon southerly arrived ahead of cue, and didn't it make things tough on the beach? While winds whipped up, it was a German duo blowing away the top seeds, Australian Julian Prosser and Swiss playing partner Sascha Hayer in the final. Led by world number 5 Christoph Dijkman, the Athens Olympian and Julius Brink continued to come up with the answers in a straight sets win, 21-16, 21-8.
I haven't lost that badly in that second set ever in my career, so Newcastle hasn't been too kind to me this year.
In the women's decider, South Australian pair Stacey Cloden and Kylie Gerlich faced their old foe in Kerry Pothast, the player which narrowly beat them for a berth at the Athens Games. Not only that, Pothast rolled them in finals of 2 earlier rounds of this series, and now teamed with Greek Olympian Vicky Caradasso, today's match was another tough assignment. It was close, but the international pairing won out in 2 sets, 21-16, 21-19.
Later this year, the Pasminco zinc and lead smelter will be cleared from the Boolaroo skyline. This week, however, work to clean up one environmental hazard caused by the old industrial site has begun. A rock groin is being constructed at the mouth of Cockle Creek. It's designed to catch heavy metal sediment, especially lead, which has been flowing from Pasminco down the creek and into the lake for the past 100 years.
We know that there's some heavy metal contamination in both the spit and the wetland. And of course, with this erosion, it's going into the lake.
The spit is a build-up of sediment extending halfway across the mouth of Cockle Creek. It's been caused by both heavy metals flowing down the creek and by sand drifting from the eastern side of the lake. The rock groin will catch that sand and sediment drifting from the Spears Point area, while around 550 cubic metres of contaminated soil will be removed at the spit to open up the creek mouth. That will also take the pressure off the western bank of the creek, which is part of the Five Islands wetlands.
The concern is the major erosion that's occurring on the opposite shoreline, which is into a wetland of state significance.
It's also expected the rock groin will become a popular fishing spot when it's finished in about 2 weeks. Todd Nardi, NBN News.
Sydney developer Rose Corp and Swansea RSL Club lodged their development application for the former Moonee Colliery washery site in August last year. The $40 million plan includes clubs, residential and service departments and a subdivision. However, because Lake Macquarie Council has taken more than 60 days to make a decision on the project, the proponents want the Land and Environment Court to make an independent ruling on the DA, a legal move that doesn't surprise Council.
It didn't really. I always felt that this issue would probably likely end up in the Land and Environment Court anyway.
Council argues the complexity of the proposal, from mine site rehabilitation to environmental considerations and the impact on historic Catherine Hill Bay, takes time to properly assess.
I believe our council could have determined the application, whether it had been for approval or for a refusal. I believe that we are competent enough to do that.
And Mayor Piper believes the case could come down to just one question: whether the court decides that the developers have an existing use right for the site.
They would have to deal with the issue first as well. Is the application valid under existing usage? If not, I think the show stops there.
Gary Blair, NBN News.
It was a pleasant surprise for Daniel Abraham, given the green light to make his comeback this Sunday. He only started running 6 weeks ago and didn't expect to be back on the field for another 4 weeks, following 2 ankle operations in the past 12 months.
It's been a long-awaited return, but I'm pretty excited about getting out there and playing a bit of football. I sort of had my heart set on making it back for round 4, but my ankle's sort of progressed really well in the last month or so, and I've been cleared by 3 specialists to come back and play.
Abraham first broke his ankle in the City Country game at Gosford last May and re-broke it again late last season. He hasn't played for 6 months, so he'll only spend about 30 minutes on the park, but his return is a timely boost to the squad, currently suffering injury woes.
Yeah, we've got a bad injury toll and the season hasn't even started, so it's actually good to get a bit of good news on the injury front.
To fill the gaps created by injured players, 19-year-old former Australian schoolboy representative Cade Snowden will be making his debut against the Storm from the bench, along with 21-year-old Matthew White from Inverell. Meanwhile, Knights centre George Carmont is still under an injury cloud with an ongoing calf problem. He'll undergo a fitness test on Saturday. If ruled out, that will push the Knights' injury toll to 10. Jane Goldsmith, NBN News. The showbiz survivor showed her fans just why she's called a Queen of Pop. At 58 years of age, Cher still managed to squeeze her way into those tiny costumes many of us will only ever dream of wearing. What she lacked in clothing she made up for with an elaborate set, and then there's that unmistakable gutsy voice that's kept her career on track. The Torres played to more than 3 million fans, and last night Newcastle was given a rare opportunity to see the star, who's currently touring major Australian cities. Across town, and there was plenty of razzle-dazzle going on inside the Westpac Rescue helicopter hangar, where a fashion parade proved a fun way to raise funds for the 30-year-old service. There was plenty of good wine and entertainment to keep guests busy, along with hosts former international model Tara Moss and former Olympian Duncan Armstrong. This Shortland teenager is leading the Australian point score series in the under-17 cross-country division, but one ride could make or break his dreams of becoming an H champion. There's been little time out of the seat for Alexander Pung, training 6 days a week for his final ride at Mount Buller in Victoria.
Definitely since I started being coached, I've had better results and learned new things, pedalling technique and how to climb better.
13-year-old Simon Campbell will be playing catch-up on Saturday. Missing a round at Cairns cost him all-important series points, and he's now placed second in his category going into the final round.
Yeah, probably in the lead by my average I'm going on now, and it might be a bit easier.
If his training is anything to go by, he's almost certain to dodge the potholes and any nasty surprises that come his way.
Dog takes you out all the time, and he chases the bike, gives you good training there, wallabies, snakes, everything.
And with all bones intact this year, Emma McNaughton is also hoping for a podium finish. Colleen West, NBN News.
Especially amongst juniors, we see a really good growth amongst our juniors. We think we've got about 40 or 50,000 registered, and probably that many again that just play socially, so that's wonderful for us to see.
"78-year-old Kathleen Hardcastle was diagnosed with Alzheimer's 2 years ago. Her memory continues to deteriorate every day. Bert is Kathleen's loving husband and full-time carer, which is no small task. Every day is physically and emotionally draining for him.
But it is very stressing and very heartbreaking to see her like that. But I I give her a lot of loving and care and all that sort of thing.
Kathleen is just one of 5,000 people in the Hunter living with Alzheimer's. It's estimated another 5,000 cases are undetected. There's minimal support for sufferers and their carers in the region, with the nearest Alzheimer's centre in Sydney. But $260,000 raised especially by Newcastle Rotary could change all that, with plans now underway to build a support centre here in the Hunter.
With this money, we'll be able to confidently go ahead and acquire a property or find some land and build just a custom-sized place for us to use.
The centre would incorporate counselling services, a library and meeting rooms for support groups.
By day, he gives the lessons at Newcastle University's Forum Gym as an instructor. But Bobby Tuimoalunga has been on something of a steep learning curve himself of late. In just his third amateur boxing bout, the man they call Two Guns stunned everyone by gunning down state super heavyweight champion Anthony McCracken for the title. Now as champion, he's in everyone's sights, and tomorrow night's rematch at Mayfield won't be taken lightly.
It's going to be coming hard this time. I know we're training very hard, and like I said, I've got to be cautious in how I approach Anthony. So, like I said, still give credit to the boy.
He does and will, considering McCracken is the national title holder. But that's another belt Bobby has his eye on later in the year. While the National Code kicks off tonight, so does Newcastle Rugby League, with Macquarie hosting Central Charlestown. Maitland's return to top-grade football, no easy task, given they'll host Premier's Western Suburbs tomorrow. And Newcastle will host the first National Paralympic Talent Search tomorrow. Several homegrown Paralympians will join national coaches as they hope to pinpoint potential stars of the future.
Back again for season 2005 and plenty of great clashes for round one. Tonight the Bulldogs take on the Dragons. All eyes are fixed on Sonny Bill Williams, who over the last 6 weeks has received unprecedented hype over his pending contract and reports he's had offers of close to $1 million a year. Now, that's enough for any 19-year-old kid to be distracted, but not him. He won't miss a beat tonight. Make sure you watch him. And likewise, Willie Mason also off contract and in the headlines for contemplating a switch to Union. Now, the difference to Willie is that he's on the sidelines for the next 20 weeks with a foot injury, and I've got the feeling that contract negotiations will be long and a drawn-out process for Willie. Other interesting points going into round one is the amount of people not backing the Knights to finish in the top 8. Now, understandably, looking at the team card for this weekend's clash against the Storm, even a few of the Knights' die-hard supporters may not recognise a few names. Now, sure, it's been a couple of weeks of turmoil and more injuries, but when I heard the reports that the Knights are one of the most backed teams to take the wooden spoon in 2005, well, that's just ludicrous. Let me point out that any team that has Andrew Johns, Danny Medeiros and the Knights' fighting spirit will be anywhere but the bottom of the table. On to round one's tips. Tonight, the Bulldogs start their season with a win, along with Eels, Panthers and the Roosters, who will clash on Saturday. While on Sunday, the Broncos, Warriors and the Knights to win their games. Good luck with round one's tips. It's going to be a great start of the season. See you next week.
Early in the week came confirmation the Newcastle Jets will host the first ever A-League competition match. And today, more good news. Star signings Ante Milicic and Jade North were both named in the provisional Socceroo squad for coming internationals against Iraq and Indonesia.
And also we get an opportunity to blood some players and to give some supposed fringe players opportunities to show what they can do.
It will be, given Australian football's two jewels in Mark Viduka and Harry Kewell are both unavailable for the Games, which could lay the platform for a more permanent playing relationship with Asian football.
You know, to be playing Iraq in Sydney and Indonesia in Perth, for me it's ideal because, one, we get our team back on the park again.
Meanwhile, the Jets' first trial game has been pushed back to next Friday, which will be against NBN Soccer League side Hamilton Olympic.
Novocastrians just love dining al fresco. In fact, outdoor tables usually book out quicker than those inside, even when the weather's not so nice.
People want it. People book to sit outside in all kinds of weather. They want to be outside and watch the moving world.
The doubling of levies for outdoor dining has frustrated restaurant owners who have to fork out $50 per year for each seat which sits on council-owned footpath. That's an additional $500 for some establishments. Cafe and restaurant owners say council should improve its services in return for their money.
The business people of this street have paid for the paving in the street. The garbage tins, we spent $30,000 and bought our own garbage tins in the street.
But the council says complaints about the increase should have come when the proposal was on public exhibition last year. It believes the taxes are still relatively small.
Some premises in other locations are paying up to $100 or in fact more than $100 a square metre for a similar space.
Jessica Phillis, NBN News.
When emergency services arrived, there was nothing they could do to save the two men in the crushed cabin. The 53-year-old driver and his 50-year-old passenger, both from Queensland, died instantly. Bound for Sydney, the refrigerated semi-trailer carrying avocados left the road near the Ayers Rock Roadhouse at around 3:30 this morning. With the Pacific Highway closed for 2 hours, then reopened partially, motorists encountered extensive delays as police tracked the semi's path.
Traffic has been delayed for some time, and as you can see, there's only one laneway being used.
Such was the force of the crash, parts of the semi-trailer were ripped clean off, showing a virtual timeline of its demise. The semi clipped a series of power poles before rolling onto its side and squarely hit another pole. That's where the vehicle came to rest. Power lines were brought down as a result, and up to 70 homes in the Great Lakes region were left without electricity for most of the day.
We're trying to restore power. Power's been off in the area for a while, and we've got the Energy Authority here to assist us in that.
A spokeswoman for Country Energy says affected customers should have power restored by tonight. Just what caused the semi-trailer to leave the highway, though, is subject to investigation. Adam McKilrick, NBN News. 19-month-old Mackay Skeet was playing in this now cordoned off area when a limb from the spotted gum tree snapped, taking just seconds to fall.
Just cracked out of nowhere, so we weren't expecting it at all. Wasn't the sort of wind you'd think would knock a branch down. So.
The limb fell with such force parts of the playground needed replacing. Had it not been for the toddler's grandfather, who was supervising the child at the time, the outcome could have been much worse.
We were really lucky that he had the sense to lift him up and hold him in out of the way. Yeah, he saved him really.
Newcastle City Council admits it may have to review tree monitoring services, but claims in this case the risk was impossible to detect as cockatoos were found to have caused the tree limb to break.
This was something we couldn't see, and I think we've learned out of the exercise.
The 4 spotted gum trees next to the playground area will be removed starting tomorrow. With the trees set to go, it opens new debate about adequate shade for the play area and whether it would be cheaper to move the equipment altogether.
We put up shade structures where we can. Here, we're just going to have to monitor a lot more and watch what the cockatoos do.
Adam McIlrick, NBN News.
Farming is a fickle game, but lately that big player, the weather, has become all too predictable. The drought has now stretched across more than 2 years and it's taking a terrible toll.
The picture is not good. It is a depressing one for farmers. There is no relief in sight.
The latest drought map shows 68% of the state is drought declared, with 14% considered marginal. The west is faring the worst, but there are worrying pockets across the state's north as well. Casino and the northeastern tip of northern New England are drought declared, while many areas are considered marginal. Over February, there was less than 5 millimetres of rain across the northwest, parched earth and crops now in desperate need.
We need widespread, unrelenting rains in this state to break this drought.
Sadly, they aren't on the immediate horizon. And every day without a decent drop increases the hardship. The state government says the drought has cost the state's farmers $4 billion over the past 2 years.
They've protected the houses on either side, and we have contained it to the dwelling.
Just 4 weeks in and already the signs are looking good for the Jets, who can already boast 2 Socceroos in Ante Milicic and Jade North, who were named in a provisional squad to play both Iraq and Indonesia. The star striker a chance for making the final 22 who'll play, given some of the Socceroos stars are out injured.
You're up against Viduka and Kuhl, it's not too easy.
Well, they're out with injury, mate, so this could be the chance.
Yeah, this could be the chance. So, the ball's round, as I say, anything can happen. So I'll just, give them my best shot.
After a standout Athens Olympics campaign, Jade North is just happy he's one of 5 Australian-based players considered for national duty, with the bulk coming from professionals playing overseas.
Just goes to show, the A-League is pushing players through to the national team, so it's good.
The club also extending their search for a backup keeper to Liam Reddy after discussions with the Croatian-based Gloveman stalled. After yesterday's heavy loss to the Storm, Newcastle may have wished they could have washed away the pain, but Adam Mulno cut the most forlorn figure at today's recovery session. The big prop ran into trouble early against Melbourne with a head clash that stirred up a disc which has sidelined him from football in the past, and it's caused a real pain in the neck for his club. Already without Josh Perry for 2 months, Mark Hughes was also added to a crowded list of injured with rib cartilage damage to cap a forgettable day for the red and blue.
Very disappointing way to start the season, but we will be better for that, and it'll drive us harder for next game, that's for sure.
Steve Simpson's solid return to football, one of the few positives for Newcastle, while the debut games for Matthew White and Cade Snowden were also encouraging.
Oh yeah, I loved it every minute. Every minute I was out there was good.
Yeah, it wasn't too bad. Probably just the speed of the game, I think. A bit different to Premier League. Wasn't that much harder, but yeah, probably wasn't the best game to play.
An understatement maybe, but also a driving force behind preparations this week for Canberra, with players keen to answer critics who have already tagged Newcastle as potential wooden spooners.
They can say what they like, mate, but we just got to get our act together and start playing good football, so it's up to us.
Jim Callanan, NBN News.
Up until about half a century ago, coal trains interrupted traffic in Hunter Street on the way from Newcastle's southern mines to the harbour. Today, traffic was stopped in Ball Street at Cooks Hill as council workers uncovered part of the old line during work on a new stormwater system. The Newcastle Coal Mining Company's railway ran between the old Burwood colliery at Glenrock, through Merriweather, the Junction, Cooks Hill, under Lehman Street, across Civic Park and over Hunter Street to the wharves. Coal from the valley would meet coal from the lake to be loaded aboard ships or to supply Newcastle's Zara Street power station.
In Newcastle, the rumble of the coal trains is a familiar sound.
It was the days of the pit ponies and a loco known as the coffee pot because of its unusual vertically mounted boiler. So next time you drive down Bull Street, spare a thought for the old days as you cross the old Burwood line. Paul Lobb, NBN News.
Never one to be far from a motorbike, Casey Stoner will soon be surrounded by the faces of world racing in the saddle of his new KTM 250cc machine in Spain for full testing ahead of the opening MotoGP race on April 10. Glad to be back in the series after some luckless years in the 125s, the young but now experienced rider will return with a fresh approach.
Every year I've gone in there with expectations and they've never worked out, so I'm just going to go into the season with no expectations and just take it race by race and see how it goes.
Competing overseas since he was 14, Stoner can see the benefits of a mid-season break in competition.
You definitely need that break in the middle of the season. It just, it starts getting to you a bit, by the time that part comes around.
Still on two wheels and success at the weekend for Emma McNaughton, who wrapped up the Elite Women's National Downhill Mountain Bike Series in Victoria, as did Alexander Pung in the Under-17s division. Both head to the Australian Championships in Adelaide this weekend. And in boxing, Newcastle's Bobby Tui Moalunga successfully defended his state super heavyweight amateur belt against Wagga's Anthony McCracken at the weekend. The hometown boy winning the 4-round bout in a unanimous points decision.
The view above the Hunters coastline this afternoon provided an insight into what's ahead for the Williamtown base. The newest jet on the flight line, a 76 Squadron Hawk fighter trainer, escorting in the Air Force's first Boeing 737 airborne early warning and control aircraft on its maiden flight to what will become home soil. The stopover as part of a national tour, including this week's Avalon International Air Show, providing an unscheduled opportunity for Australian contractors and defence to see the AWACS.
We thought we couldn't miss the opportunity to bring the aircraft down here and actually show all the people working on it just how much they've achieved.
Wedgetail 1 is currently in the midst of initial flight tests in the United States. It's the first of a 6-aircraft order by the RAAF for Williamtown Base 2 Squadron. The multi-role surveillance aircraft with the unusual-looking roof-mounted radar pod will finally allow the Air Force to use the FA-18 Hornet to full capacity and for the Navy, Army and Coast Watch to better coordinate their activities.
The radar provides 360-degree coverage out beyond in the order of 300, in excess of 300 miles in all directions, and looking at both airborne targets and maritime targets.
The initial 2 completed wedgetail AWACS are due at Williamtown in November next year. Gary Blair, NBN News.
They want to be above the law. They want to ensure that no company, no mine manager will ever be prosecuted.